It's officially Halloween, which means welcome to your Halloween ranking palette video. Y'all know that October is my absolute favorite time of the month. My birthday's this month. Halloween is this month. I get to decorate. I absolutely live for Halloween. And every year, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, I have been ranking my top Halloween palettes. It used to be 10 palettes, and then it grew, and then it grew some more. So for today's video, we have 38 palettes that inspire me during the month of Halloween and remind me so much of Halloween. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right on in. So last year we had 37 palettes. I actually almost said presents because it just reminds me of the scene from Harry Potter.
36, but last year I had 37!
Something like that. It just reminds me of that scene. But last year we had 37 palettes, and in today's video we have 38 palettes. Now there are some palettes from last year's ranking that did not make it in this year's ranking, and there's also some new palettes that made it into this year's ranking, and we may sadly have to see some palettes go because they may have to be retired because sadly they're breaking. So with that said, I have to say my famous catchphrase, which is welcome to Vlogoween. But sadly, I do have to let you guys know, don't kill me, but Vlogoween probably is not going to be happening this year.
I was rooting for you! We were all rooting for you! How dare you!
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
No? Oh, don't cry, are you?
I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I am just overcome with work. Since getting my job back at Disney, it's been kind of hectic. I'm trying to balance between making content for my Patreon members, between my 2 side hustles, between my job at Disney and doing YouTube, and having somewhat of a personal life. For a fact, I will not be posting every single day. I'm still going to probably do like 4 to 5 videos if I can, but honestly, I know you guys have been looking forward to the Vlogoween series. This would be the first time in 4 years that I haven't done it. I physically just don't have the time. I really don't have the time. So I'm so sorry for not having Vlogoween. However, I will happily say it in every single video because to me, it's still Vlogoween time. So let's go ahead and dive right on into this year's Halloween palette ranking. Okay, so coming in at number 38, I never had a chance to feature this palette on my channel because when I got it, it was a little bit too late for me to review it. But I have a palette called Salem and the Witch. This is from Salem Cosmetics. So first off, I love the outside packaging. I think the outside packaging is beautiful. Now, when it comes to me ranking these palettes, I do take an account of the outside packaging, but mostly I look at the color story inside and think what really inspires me for Halloween, what reminds me of Halloween. And though the outside packaging really does kind of scream Halloween, it's the color story on the inside. So this is Salem and the Witch palette. Now I will say this is a really pretty palette. Like it's a really pretty palette, but I don't necessarily see Halloween when I look at it. I look at it, I'm like, oh, she's pretty, she's cute, but where's the Halloween colors? I don't see it. I see spells, I see little witch, I see altar, I see hex, I see familiar. Like I see terms that are reminding me of Halloween, but nothing really aesthetically wise. Now the formula is really beautiful. I loved the formula. I loved playing with this palette when I did. I just never got a chance to show it to you guys, but I will say it's a really beautiful palette. So coming in number 38, we do have Salem and the Witch palette from Salem Cosmetics. Coming in number 37, we have the Vita palette right here. This is from the Day of the Dead collection with Milk Cosmetics. Now, when you put the Vita palette and the Morte palette together, it does make a really beautiful skull. Like I think these two are oh my god. I think these two are absolutely beautiful together. I love how you have like life and you have death. I think it's really sweet. So I'm gonna go ahead and show this palette to you guys. This is the Vita palette right here. And I will say the outside packaging is super beautiful. And the color story on the inside, I can kind of see Halloween-esque shades. Like it's kind of there, but really not. Like it's kind of more fall-esque to me than it is actual like Halloween, because the reason I was ranking this is because it is the Day of the Dead celebration. If you guys don't know, that celebration usually takes place between like November 1st through like the 2nd, and it is to honor those who are no longer with us. Typically you put up a sort of altar with like the family's loved one's photo. You have like candles, you have little memorials around there to celebrate their life in hopes that their spirit crosses the spirit realm and celebrates their life with you. It's the time of year where the spirits can like have that very thin veil where they can cross the line into the living world and just be with their loved ones. I just think it's a really beautiful tradition, and that's what this palette's about. It's about celebrating the life and those who are no longer with us. And so that is why this is going to be in here, because Day of the Dead, even though it's not necessarily a like Halloween, it is like a Halloween sort of tradition, because like on Halloween it's all Hallows Eve. It's all supposed to be when the veil between the two worlds is at its thinnest and spirits are supposed to cross over, and that is why you do trick or treat, because you're supposed to originally give treats to the spirit. You're supposed to give offerings to the spirit so they don't trick and haunt your house. Like that was the whole purpose of Halloween. I did a whole deep dive on the origins of Halloween years ago. I'll link it down below if you guys want to check it out. I think this story is absolutely fascinating, how All Hallows Eve turned into the commercialized Halloween that we know to this day. But I just think that this is such a beautiful tradition, so that is why it is going to be ranked at number 37, the Vita palette from Melt Cosmetics. And at number 36, we do have the Morte palette right here, and this is going to be the opposite side. So the other one was like celebrating life. This is going to be about celebrating death right here. So I will say the color story is really beautiful. Again, not necessarily traditional Halloween shades, but it's just the concept as a whole as to why I still have this ranked in here. I think you can definitely find a little bit more deeper, darker shades in this palette versus the other palette. And that's something I definitely want to take note, and that's why like it's always going to be ranked in here, because it is a celebration of life and death, and I just feel like it's a really pretty palette. Like I said, I don't really see too much of Halloween in here, but you can make some Halloween-esque vibes with it. So that is why at number 36 we do have the Day of the Dead palette from Melt Cosmetics. Okay, so coming in at number 35, we do have the Gourmand Girls. This is going to be the Nightshade palette. Now this typically has nothing to do with Halloween whatsoever, but it's the color story on the inside that really kind of remind me of Halloween. You're going to have those greens, but those purples and blacks. You do have a little bit of yellows in here as well. But to me, this definitely can represent Halloween with the colors that you can use. Like you can use the greens and the blacks, the purples and the blacks, the greens and the purples together to really create some sort of Halloween-esque look. Not to mention, this is supposed to be a killer palette. This is supposed to be about poisonous flowers that do kill you, and for some reason it just kind of gives off the vibes of Halloween. While it's not truly traditional Halloween colors and style, there are some components of it that do remind me of Halloween. So that is why at number 35 we do have the Nightshade palette from Gourmand Girls. I believe this is still available. If it is, you guys can use my code to save you guys 10% off. Coming number 34, we do have Beetlejuice. This is going to be the Melt Cosmetics Beetlejuice collection. Now I loved the original Beetlejuice movie. I grew up with that movie. My parents had me watch it when I was a child. My mom actually really had me watch a lot of horror movies as a child. She loved horror movies, so she passed that love on to me. So I was always obsessed with horror movies. We watched them all the time, especially during the Halloween season. And I remember growing up with Beetlejuice. Now, my husband never grew up with it, so he just recently watched it for the first time, and he was like, "What is this shit?" And I was like,
"You have no taste."
But here is the Beetlejuice palette right here. This definitely reminds me so much of Halloween. You have those beautiful, awkward colors, right? The colors that don't necessarily complement each other, but they do at the same time. You have the purples and the greens, and combining the two together, it's just aesthetically beautiful palette. I loved playing with this palette. I think it's so pretty. This looks like everything that has to do with like Halloween, even though it's not. It is Halloween in my opinion, because like people love to watch Beetlejuice during the Halloween season, just because it's one of those iconic movies. And I just love everything about this palette, from those perfect purple Halloween purples to perfect Halloween greens. It just says everything to me. While it's not as highly rated as other palettes are, because those are more traditional Halloween colors, this to me still reminds me of Halloween. I love it. So that is why at number 34 we have the Melt Cosmetics Recently Deceased Beetlejuice palette. Coming in at number 33 we have Unearthly Cosmetics. This is going to be the Gargoyle palette. Now this doesn't necessarily scream Halloween from the outside packaging, right? Like gargoyles doesn't really scream Halloween, but to me it kind of does, because it kind of reminds me of those old Gothic cathedrals that you'd actually see gargoyle statues outside of, and like it just kind of reminds me of like Beauty and the Beast, and like me being terrified to walk into those old Gothic cathedrals like with the gargoyle staring down at me. I feel like I'm gonna see some pouring rain happening, and there's gonna be flashes of lightning, and I'm gonna see a beast with like a club in the background. Like that kind of gives me Halloween vibes. But it's the colors from the inside. The colors from the inside is absolutely beautiful. You're gonna have those dark, cool tone, like morbid-esque colors. You're gonna have the deep blues, the black, the purples, the grays, just kind of dark, like just dark like a dark themed palette, which I really do appreciate. So even though it's not geared for Halloween, she didn't intend this for Halloween, it's kind of the vibes I get when I look at this palette. I can definitely create some really beautiful like purpley black eyeshadow looks, some blue black eyeshadow looks, some blue and purple eyeshadow looks. I can create a lot that kind of reminds me of Halloween. So even though it's not fully Halloween-esque, it has some vibes. So that is why at number 33, we do have the Unearthly Cosmetics Gargoyle Palette. Coming in at number 32, and we actually just recently got a restock of this. So if you guys are doing to pick it up, you guys can use my code. But we have the Nomad Cosmetics. This is going to be the Ghost Town palette. Now, when you think of Halloween, what do you think of? You think of ghosts, you think of witches, you think of goblins and ghouls and trick-or-treating, but you definitely do think of ghosts. Ghosts are always represented during Halloween, and that's kind of what the vibe of this palette is. You're going to have the Ghost Town palette right here. Now, I really do enjoy the aesthetics of this palette because first off, you're going to have just a normal town right here, just a normal town, and then boom, ghost town. Normal town, boom, ghost town. I freaking love the particular switch, and when you open the color store on the inside, it's not really Halloween-esque. It's more like a cool tone, gloomy gray style palette. But I just really did enjoy just the aesthetics of it because I can kind of create some Halloween vibes with this side right here. Not really so much of this side, but definitely this side right here. I can definitely create some Halloween-esque looks or some Halloween vibes. But I still wanted to rank this in today's video because it is a ghost town palette. It's supposed to represent those who, again, are not with us. It's supposed to be the ghost and haunting of a old Wild West, you know, town. I just think ghosts remind me so much of Halloween. So that is why at number 32 we have the Nomad Cosmetics Ghost Town palette. And I have to say, even though it's not ranked high for Halloween, the color story itself, like as a whole, oh my god, it's stunning. Coming in at number 31, we have Little Children, I'll take you away. All right, so we have the Gather Around Sisters from ColourPop. Now, this was the original OG Hocus Pocus palette. This came out in 2020, and when this launched, oh my god, this sold out in seconds. ColourPop could not keep this palette in stock. It sold out so unbelievably fast that they were even shocked themselves. They're like, oh shit, like they don't have collections that sell like that for them, and especially not anymore. And they launched this and everybody wanted to get their hands on it, myself included. So this is the Hocus Pocus palette. You guys know how much I love Hocus Pocus. I watch it every year on October 1st and every year on October 31st. It's like been a tradition for me for so many years. So I'm definitely watching it today, and I have to say I absolutely love this palette. Now, this may not be the traditional colors where I look for anymore, but it does have some Halloween, but it does have Halloween to it. Like when you think of Halloween, Hocus Pocus definitely comes to mind because the Virgin lit the black flame candle on Halloween in 1993 or 1994. The Sanderson sisters came back to finish off what they started and take the youth of all the children. And if I'm spoiling it for you, well then, you know, movie's been out for like 30 years, so I do apologize. It's such a beautiful palette, such a beautiful collection. I do think that they did such a horrible job with like the sister's face, like It's not a look for them, but the color story itself is really pretty. You're going to have those traditional purples, greens, blacks, and a little bit of orange. And I just think it's really pretty. It definitely does scream Halloween to me. Hocus Pocus is all about Halloween, and I just thought they did such a really pretty job with this. So coming in number 31, we do have the ColourPop Gather Around Sisters. To round off the 30s, we do have the Glamlight Chucky in Love palette right here. Now, whenever I think of Halloween, I think of the iconic horror movies that I watch. I watch Chucky, I watch The Leprechaun, I watch, you know, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I watch Predator, I watch Alien, I watch Saw, I watch so many different horror movies that just remind me so much of Halloween, even though they're not necessarily intended for Halloween. Some are, like Trick or Treat, Little Sam. Some are definitely intended for Halloween, like the movies Halloween with Michael Myers, but others are just intended just to be pure horror movies. But every year, Halloween Horror Nights always tend to grab those horror movies and make them into haunted houses. So they do kind of bring the vibe of Halloween, and that is why we were bringing Chucky into the matter. Now, this is supposed to be like an anti-Valentine's Day palette, but it could also be considered Halloween because it's Chucky, and Chucky's a creepy ass doll that you would never want to come to life. Almost like Furby. Oh my god, if somebody did like a Furby collection, I don't know if I'd buy it because Furbies were creepy as fuck. The way they just go like, oh my god, I would throw that shit in the trash so freaking fast. But anyway, here is the Chucky in Love palette from from Limelight. And there's definitely there's definitely deep colors in here. Like you can create like a really vampy-esque look. Like kind of like look I'm walking right now. It's not this palette, but you can kind of create a really vampy-esque look when playing with this palette. Even though it's supposed to be traditional anti-Valentine's Day, I think it offers so much for Halloween. It has Chucky, it has the killer vibes, and it has deep dark colors like black, red, purple. Like you can create a lot of Halloween-esque looks with this. So that is why it's not too high on my list, but it's still a Halloween palette in my opinion. So coming in at number 30 and rounding off the 30s, we have the Chucky in Love palette from Glamlight. All right, to kick off our 20s, we have the Lunar Beauty Moonspell Volume 2 palette. Now, first off, this is supposed to look like a Book of Shadows, and Book of Shadows are correlated with witches, and witches can be associated with Halloween, so I love that vibe already. I think this is such a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing palette. When I reviewed this, I actually did like a Halloween-esque intro. Let me actually go ahead and show you that intro. My finest work, but I still do appreciate the aesthetics of it nonetheless. So this is going to be the Moonspell Volume 2 from Lunar Beauty. You open it up like you would a book of spells, and on the inside it is going to be an all purple red palette right here. Now Manny created this to curate to those who really wanted more traditional Halloween-esque colors, along with creating a palette more geared towards witches. So you're going to see a lot of nods to the different witches throughout the years that are featured in different Hollywood movies. And I think it's really cool that he did that. You have a beautiful black with shimmer in this, and you're going to have those purples, those reds, and a little bit of the pinks that can definitely be correlated with Halloween. Like, again, you can create a vampy look with this. You can create a really beautiful witchy look with this. And I think it's a really pretty palette. It may not be his best, in my opinion, but it still does hit the mark when it comes to Halloween with, like, the witches, the Book of Shadows feel from the outside packaging to the color store on the inside. So that is why to kick off the 20s, we have number 29, the Moonspell Volume 2 palette. Number 28, we have one of my close friends, Angelica Nefish. She created her own Halloween collection with Odin's Eye, and she created two different palettes. The first one being this little ghost palette right here. First off, the outside packaging is really cool. You get a mix of like Angelica along with like a skeleton and some really creepy pumpkins that I absolutely love. It's supposed to be a little ghost palette, so it's supposed to be representing Halloween. And then the color story on the inside, she's really cute. She's really cute. Now, she's a little bit too vibrant for me when it comes to Halloween. There's too many different colors that I don't necessarily always want to associate with Halloween, but it's still pretty nonetheless. You're going to have some yellows, some blues, and some purples. I could definitely see the blues and purples, not so much the yellows in here being associated with Halloween. It's a little bit too poppy for me, almost like a fun house. That's kind of the vibe that I got with this when I first played with it, but all the names in here do remind you of Halloween. You have like zombie and boo and haunted house, ominous, little ghost. You have banana taffy from getting like candy from trick-or-treating, cobweb, magical, candy corn, screech, broomstick. Like, she definitely did a fantastic job coming up with names and shades. And even though it doesn't fully fit the vibe, the aesthetics of this as a whole and the concept of the whole is the reason why it does come in at number 28, because it does fit somewhat of the Halloween vibe. So number 28, we do have the Little Ghost palette from Angelica Nefish and Odin Eye Cosmetics. Coming in at number 27, we have the original Moonspell palette from Lunar Beauty. Let's go ahead and look at that intro. Now that intro was hectic to film. Like, I literally had to turn off every single light in my house. I had to light the whole thing with candles behind me, afraid that something was going to catch on fire, and try to capture a aesthetically witchy vibe. Listen, if I could do it all over again, I would do it so differently. But I still tried. But here we have the Moonspell Volume 1 palette from Lunar Beauty. So first off, you take the packaging right here, and this is going to be the outside cover. Like, this is absolutely beautiful. This looks so much like the Book of Shadows. Like, this looks so much like a Book of Shadows. It is absolutely gorgeous. I love the way that this looks. I think they did a great job depicting a creepy witch-like spell book. And they open the colors on the inside. Not necessarily Halloween, but there is some colors, so like the purple and the green. It's kind of like what I see, right? Like purple and green. But he has, again, shades in here that are supposed to represent all the different famous witches throughout cinema. And again, I think he did a really great job with that. So while this doesn't really hit the vibe full much of Halloween, because the fact that I filmed this for Halloween, the outside packaging reminds me of Halloween. It just kind of gives you the vibes of Halloween. So even though it's not the highest, it's still super cute. One that I would cherish and I like to use every Halloween. I can even use this as like a background decorative piece for my background. That actually would fit really nicely. So coming in at number 27, we do have the Moonspell palette from Lunar Beauty. Alrighty, coming in at number 26, this is a brand that I have not featured on my channel because, again, I got this palette a little bit late last year, didn't get a chance to play with it, and by the time I was going to, I don't know, I just felt like it was too late, but I'm happy to feature it today. It is the Wicked Widow. This is the Graveyard Smash palette. First off, I love the Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein on here, and when I see Graveyard Smash, I immediately think of the Monster Mash. You know, the Monster Mash, do, 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 do. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, I love the Monster Mash song. It plays every year for Halloween, always on the radio. And when you look at the color story on the inside, it does have a little bit of Halloween-esque vibes to it. You're going to have those like weird doo-doo green shades, those swampy color like greens. You're gonna have the beautiful like Halloween purple and that beautiful Halloween orange, along with some shimmers to complement it. And they're gonna have a lot of like Halloween themes, like the names, like you're gonna have Harvest Horror, Fright Night, Groovy Goals, Sea Frank, and Monster Mash. And I don't know, like I definitely get a lot of vibes when I see this. I think this actually came out last year during the Halloween season. Like I said, I never got a chance to play with it. The formula is actually quite nice. I think it's a really pretty color story and just reminds me so much of the Monster Mash, and then makes me think of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like it reminds me of that as well. So that's why I really like that, and that's to me is a Halloween movie. So for me, that is why at number 26 we do have the Wicked Widow Graveyard Smash, aka Monster Mash palette. Okay, so coming number 25, we have another It's Another Day, Another ColourPop palette, and this is going to be the Witching Hour palette from ColourPop. This is their second Hocus Pocus collection palette, and I believe I did an intro for this one as well. I think I had fun with that intro. But this is going to be the Witching Hour palette. So again, we have the Sanderson sisters right here flying under a moon on their broomsticks. And we open the color store on the inside. I mean, it's Halloween. Like, it has those traditional Halloween colors. Mine is like the blue necessarily. This is more fall to me than it is Halloween. But you're going to have the purple oranges in here. And I don't know. I guess for me, witches, Sanderson sister, Hocus Pocus reminds me so much of Halloween. So it's why it's ranked higher than others. It's definitely not my favorite one out of all my palette. It's definitely not my favorite, Hocus Pocus palette. But to me, it does remind me of Halloween. It has All Hallow Eves. It has a lot of Halloween shade names in here. So for me, it's why it's ranked a little bit higher than the other ones, because it does kind of fit more of the traditional Halloween route. So coming in at number 25, we do have the Witching Hour palette from ColourPop. Coming in at number 24, we have the Book of Magic palette from Beauty Bay. Now, Beauty Bay wanted to jump on board, I believe it was like a year or two ago, to create their own witchy vibe palette. And this is what we're going to have right here. So this is more of like witch colors between like the blues, blacks, and purples in here. That's the vibe I get. All the shade names in here are definitely reminding me a lot of Halloween. You have like Sorcerer, Manifest, Bewitch, Spell, Hex, Charmed, Trick, Jinx, Curse, like Hallows Eve. Like you have shades in here. They're definitely representing Halloween, witches, and everything that's associated with it. And I think it's such a beautiful color story. I kind of like that's a little bit different from like traditional Halloween colors in the sense that it just reminds me of like a witch. Like I could do like really witchy vibe looks with this. And if you guys have never played with any Beauty Bay palettes, they have phenomenal formula. Loved playing with this palette. I think it's such a gorgeous palette. And like I said, it just reminds me a lot of Halloween because it is a book of magic, and anything like that I do associate with Halloween. So coming in at number 24, we do the Book of Magic palette from Beauty Bay. Coming in at number 23, we have
Welcome, foolish mortals.
That is right. We have the ColourPop Welcome Foolish Mortals palette. Now, this actually did launch last year, and they actually did relaunch. It's available now on their website. And I think you guys can find this at Target and Ulta. And I have to say, this is a really pretty palette. It's the Haunted Mansion palette, and Haunted Mansion is a huge thing over at Disney. I know that for Halloween over in Disneyland, they decorate it as a Nightmare Before Christmas style, even though one here in Florida, they do not do that. It's just a traditional, Haunted Mansion palette. But this to me is really beautiful. Like, it's a really beautiful palette. It says Beware, which to me, whenever I think of Haunted Mansion, I do think of Halloween. I always do. It's supposed to be this haunted like mansion that you go through, and then essentially the story goes, if you guys actually were to deep dive, the story goes, you go on this ride, and then during the ride you die. Like, you die somewhere in the haunted mansion, and that's why your spirit now travels down to the graveyard, and you're able to see all the spirits that are there. And that is why it says there's no turning back now. So I think it's a really cool concept. Most people don't really talk about that. At least I don't think they do, but I love that little theory. And that's why I think of this. Like, even though it's not traditional Halloween colors, you just have those deep colors. You just have those deep blues, purples, and blacks in here, and I just think it's really pretty. So even though it's not the highest, it still reminds me of Halloween because it's a haunted mansion palette. And this ride gets so busy during the month of October because everybody wants to ride the Haunted Mansion because it's just a great classic ride. Coming in at number 22, we have Scooby-Dooby-Doo, Where Are You? This is the Scooby-Doo Creeps and Crawls palette. First off, the outside packaging reminds me of a graveyard, and the moon and the bats. Immediate Halloween thought in my head, right? Immediate. Plus, like, creepy, like, cathedral in the background. Then you have the front, you have Shaggy. But the color story on the inside, to me, reminds me of, like, I would say, I almost want to say, like, Black Widow spider for some reason. It's like the vibes I get with this. I'd want to create, like, a Black Widow look with this, or, like, a Black Widow spider with this, or, like, a witch vibe with this. Like, it's just a really pretty color story. I love how deep the colors are. You get the deep purple, blue, and, like, light purple. It's a really pretty palette. This actually came out, during Halloween, like, 2 years ago, so it just reminds me of Halloween. I just feel like the whole aesthetics of the outside color story to the inside color story to the packaging just kind of represent Halloween in a very unique way. It's not the traditional colors, but you have those deep dark colors as well that you can definitely do really fun creative looks with during the month of Halloween. So that is why at number 22 we have the Scooby-Doo Creeps and Crawl palette. Coming in at number 21, we do have Unearthly, but back then it was called Alien Cosmetics, and this is the Not Normal palette. Now, if you guys did not know, Unearthly actually went ahead and they redid the Not Normal palette, but they went ahead and extended the line. So this is gonna be like, I think 12 shades in here, and they extended it to 18. So they added like 6 more shades, and now it says Unearthly instead of Alien Cosmetics. They did have to rebrand, but I will say this is a really pretty color story. Now, aliens, I definitely do associate with Halloween. Like, why not? Like, a lot of people talk about alien stuff during Halloween. They'll dress up as aliens for Halloween. Like, aliens and ghosts and wolves and vampires, like all that stuff can be associated with Halloween. And this is just a very unique color story. You have those unique greens in here, purples and browns, and it's just a really pretty vibe. I've always loved this palette. I loved playing with this palette. I can create some really beautiful, like, Halloween-esque, maybe almost mummy-esque vibes with this. So that is why it's ranked a little bit higher than others, but it's just a really pretty palette. I love the alien vibes of this, and aliens are always just Halloween for me. So that is why at number 21, we do have the Unearthly Cosmetics Not Normal palette. Okay, so to round out the 20s, we have 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab a crucifix. 7, ain't gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again. And that is the Glamlight X Nightmare on Elm Street Never Sleep Again palette. I always watch A Nightmare on Elm Street during Halloween. I love watching horror movies every single night. I believe there's like a certain channel, I don't know if it's AMC or I don't know if it's AMC or like Sci-Fi Channel. There's like a channel that plays horror movies every single day for the month of Halloween, and they always end up playing Nightmare on Elm Street. So that is why this is going to be in here. Even though the color story on the inside is not really Halloween, it could be, because Freddy Krueger, I just associate with Halloween. People dress up with him for Halloween every single year. It's always like a tradition for people dress up as him every year for Halloween. I know they want to bring him back, and I just feel like the color story, it can't be like kind of like what I'm wearing now, like a vampy color story, even though it's supposed to be like a killer palette. To me, it can definitely be like a vampy vibe palette. You can definitely use this for Halloween. It's really pretty. Definitely a color story that I don't necessarily gravitate to a lot because I'm just not a red gal. I never have been. Lips, yes. Eyes, not so much. But it's a really pretty palette. It's a really pretty palette. And whenever I think of Halloween, I always watch horror movies, and the classic Nightmare on Elm Street is always featured. So that is why, rounding off the 20s, we do have the Freddy Krueger, the Nightmare on Elm Street, Never Sleep Again palette. Coming in at number 19, we do have the other Glamlight Nightmare on Elm Street. This is going to be the Freddy Krueger palette right here. Again, this is going to, did I just spit? I just spit out, I think, a piece of popcorn because I'm eating like skinny popcorn. I think you just spit out of my mouth. Ooh. Okay, so number 19, we have the beautiful Freddy Krueger palette. Now this is a like swampy vibe. So this kind of reminds me of like a swamp monster, or like the Monsters of the Lagoon, or like The Thing. Like it just kind of reminds me of that. That's the vibe I get when I look at this, like just like a swampy monster vibe. And that could definitely be associated with Halloween. May not be traditional colors in the slightest, but for me, the vibe of it as a whole definitely does scream like a monster-esque creature of the Black Lagoon. Like that's the kind of vibe that I'm getting right here. Again, this is a Freddy Krueger, so this is another horror movie. This is the same horror movie we just talked about. So for me, it's definitely going to be in Halloween, just because how could it not be? It's Freddy Krueger. He's traditional Halloween characters. So for me, that is why at number 19, we do have the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy Krueger palette. Coming at number 18, we do have the iconic ghost face killer right here. So this is called Ghostface Lives, and if you guys do not know, Glamlight is re-releasing this palette, but I think it's gonna be called Ghostface Remastered or Ghostface something. I forgot what it's called. Glamlight is definitely redoing the Ghostface palette. This time they're bringing you a shit ton of reds because a lot of people complain that there were not reds in this palette, but they're definitely gonna be in the next palette. So this is the Ghostface Lives right here. And first off, Ghostface is just an iconic Halloween killer. You know what I mean? Like this has been around for a very long time. They have done the Scream movies for so long, and the color story on the inside I think is really beautiful. It's like a unique like graveyard color story. Like that's the vibe I get. It's like a graveyard color story, like just really like cool tone grays, grungy blues, and just some blacks, and you don't really see that often in palettes. I think this is a really beautiful palette. I think they did a good job. Like I personally am okay without the reds, especially now knowing there is gonna be a red palette coming out. That, like, for me, I think this is really beautiful, and this just reminds me of a graveyard, and graveyards I do think with Halloween. So that is why at number 18, we do have the Ghostface lip palettes, because it's another classic Halloween horror movie that gets played time and time again every year. And I just love seeing Ghostface get his moment. Coming number 17, we have and that is the Friday the 13th palette from Glamlight. This is the Camp Crystal Lake. First off, the packaging, oh my god, it's iconic. But the color story on the inside is just really, really, really beautiful. So you're going to have the classic lenticular Camp Crystal motion packaging. And the color story on the inside, again, this kind of reminds me of like a swamp, like a creature feature moment. You're going to have reds, greens, a little bit of neutral colors, and blues. You can definitely use this for Halloween to create a really beautiful look. I love the look that came up with. It reminded me so much of like Creatures of the Black Lagoon like look. It just was a really like a swampy thing look, and I just think it's really pretty. And again, when I think of Halloween, I think of all the classic horror movies, and Friday the 13th, Jason just reminds me so much of Halloween. So that is why at number 17, we have Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake palette from Glamlight. Coming in number 16. Now this palette originally launched in September, but I didn't get it until January because there was just a huge delay with this palette. And by the time I got it, I kind of forgot about it. And when I look at the color story, I always think of a mummy. Like I just always think of a mummy. I don't know why. It just reminds me so much of a mummy. And it just reminds me of like Under Wrap, like this classic like Disney movie that came out a long time ago, and like Halloween Town. It just reminds me of like those vibes. And it is the Batty Bean, well back then Butte Bean, collaboration with Shaw Cosmetics. It's freaking bats. I love this palette. I love the look I created with it. Betty created this in mind for like Halloween and her favorite colors. But I will say, sadly, my palette is sadly breaking apart. I really can't show too much of it, but every single shimmer shade is slowly starting to break apart. I don't know why. It's why you're not going to see a close-up of the palette. It's why you're not going to see any swatches of the palette. Mine is just slowly breaking apart. So that's why I don't have like a nice close-up of this palette. I'm using like old footage because the fact that mine is breaking, and I don't know why. Like Betty's like I talked to Betty about this. I don't know why mine's breaking. Mine is not compact in my drawers. It's not at all. It's just slowly breaking, and it's not the first one that's breaking. My other Shroud Cosmetics palette's breaking. I know that Chloe used to hand press these herself, so maybe that's why. I don't know, but it just makes me really sad because I really do love this palette, and I think for the first time I'm going to have to put this into a shadow box and retire this palette from my collection so that it doesn't break up any more than it already has. It's really beautiful. Now, I know I could take some alcohol and press the shades together, which I'm happy to do, but it's just really, really sad because I'm not really doing anything to this palette, and it's just the edges of this are just starting to crumble. It's not even in the middle. It's just all the edges are slowly starting to come up from the palette itself. So it's really beautiful. It reminds me of a mummy. I think Betty did such a good job with It's Freaking Bats. Bats associated with Halloween. She loves bats, and I really love this, and I love Betty Jean so freaking much. So for me, I'm going to probably have to retire this, but I still wanted to show it for today because it is just so freaking iconic. So coming in at number 16, we do have the It's Freaking Bats palette with Batty Bean and Shroud Cosmetics. Coming at number 16, we have the other Scooby-Doo palette from Glamlight. Again, we have the iconic like graveyard background. So freaking cute, but it's the color story on the inside. This color story, y'all, I think is so beautiful because it reminds me a lot of the Betty Bean. It reminds me a lot of Betty Jean's palette of It's Freaking Bats. It's kind of like the same vibe. If you actually look at it, it's kind of like the same vibe. To me, this reminds me so much of like a mummy. I don't know why I get mummy vibes with this. I got the same thing with Betty's. I don't know why. It's just kind of the vibe I get. But it definitely have those Halloween-esque colors. You have like those really unique greens, purples, and blues in here that just remind me so much of Halloween. Again, this was a collection that came out during Halloween a couple years ago. I fell in love with this. I think this is such a beautiful palette, beautiful, beautiful formula, and I just really, really enjoyed this, and I just love the uniqueness of the colors. And like I said, it reminds me so much of It's Freaking Bats, so I think Glamlight did a good job with this one. So that is why at number 15, we do have this Scooby-Doo Ruh-Roh palette. Coming in at number 14, we do have the Gourmand Girls Haunted palette. Now, this palette was designed for Halloween. It was designed for Halloween. It says haunted, and on the inside you are going to have those really beautiful, unique like Halloween colors. You're going to have the swamp greens, the blacks, the purples, and a little bit of yellow, which I don't necessarily think yellow too much with Halloween, even though it's more like a deep mustard yellow. It's like definitely not deep mustard. For me, associate that color more with fall than anything else, but you can use that for the month of October. It's very unique. It's very colorful. You're going to have witches hats in here. You're going to have graveyard. You're going to have tombstones in here. And of course, you're going to have all of the classic traditional Halloween names in here as well. This is meant to be a Halloween palette. It's called Haunted, and it's just supposed to be a great complement. It's supposed to be another addition to like their Spooked palette that came out a long time ago. The Spooked palette that came out like 2 years ago, and I really love this palette. I love the colors in here. I love the formula. I just feel like they did a really great job. I see this and I think of Halloween immediately. I get super excited, super inspired. So that is why number 14, we do have the Haunted palette with Gourmand Girls. And number 13, we do have the Nomad Cosmetics. This is the Haunted Europe palette. Like I said, these palettes are officially back in stock. They did sell out, and they were able to get them in stock before Halloween, which I think is absolutely fantastic. This was, I think, the first palette that Nomad did a lentacular motion feel to it. So you're going to have Nomad, and they're going to have Haunted Europe. So freaking beautiful. And then you open the color store on the inside, you're going to have like somewhat of the more traditional colors. You're going to have the greens, purples, and here a little, maybe get some blues, but along with like just like the bat, you see bat imprints, you see like a cobweb imprints in here. You see some Catacombs, Frankenstein, Highgate Cemetery, Ghost River, Bloody Mary, Krampus. Like you see Count Dracula. Like you see things that are kind of geared towards what people associate during Halloween, which I think is really cool. I think Nomad kind of did a great job capturing like almost like a family-friendly version of Halloween, like the light, making it not so scary Halloween version versus like Halloween Horror Nights. I really do love playing this palette. I loved talking about vampires and the lore of Louisiana, New Orleans when I play this palette. So for me, this is definitely always going to be a little bit more higher up compared to others because it just kind of fits more the vibe for Halloween. So coming in number 13, we do have the Haunted Europe palette from Nomad Cosmetics. Coming in at number 12, we do have the Rebel Rouge Labs. This is Creatures of Forever palette. First off, I love the outside packaging, and when you open it up this way, the packaging changes. I love that for Rebel Rouge Labs. They always like to switch up their packaging. So this is going to be like a haunted graveyard. And when you open the color story up in the inside, this may not necessarily scream Halloween, but the reason why I threw it in here a little bit higher is because this is supposed to be like a throwback to like the 1980s Halloween, like a throwback classic to the traditional like 1980s Halloween vibes. So you're going to have like Time Terror, Phantom, Spooksville, Midnight Club, Ancient Evil, Die Softly, Bury Me Deep, Spellbound. You're going to have shades in here and color stories in here. They're just a throwback to like the early, like the late 80s, early 90s. And that was the whole intent of this, was a classic throwback. I loved playing this palette. I created a really beautiful look when I played this palette. I ranked it, I forgot where I ranked it last year on my on my Halloween ranking, but I know I really do enjoy this palette. I think Rebel Rouge did a really great job with this. And you have some colors of like the green, purple, orange, a little bit of this shade, some purples over here that kind of do scream a little bit Halloween. So that is why it's a little bit higher, just because the shade names, the outside packaging do remind me a lot of Halloween. So coming in at number 12, we do have the Creatures of Forever palette. So to round out the teens and actually show you guys what I'm currently wearing on my eyes, we have the new Bella Beauté bar. This is going to be the Vamp eyeshadow palette right here. Now I actually did film this entire look for you guys because I'm doing, I think, 3 or 4 looks. 3 looks, 3 palettes, or 4 looks, 4 palettes. I haven't truly decided. I think it's 3 looks, 3 palettes. Yes. No, 4 looks, 4 palettes. I'm doing 4 looks, 4 palettes. So you guys are going to actually see that video, I think, on Saturday. Because the last palette is a palette that I can't reveal until Saturday. So I think that's when you're going to see the video then. But I did film this look for you guys right here. This is the Vamp palette. First off, this outside, this look is actually really, really pretty. I want to go for like a vampire-esque look, which I feel like I capture that right here. Like I try to mimic it. But this is going to be the Bella Beauté Bar Vamp palette. Now this actually does, I think, retail for $72. And you guys can use my code Allie, save you guys 10% off. And this is going to be launching this Friday, October 4th at 12 p.m. Eastern time if you guys want to go get your hands on this. And this to me is a pure vampire palette. This is a vampire palette. You see so many palettes are catered to like witches and maybe trick or treat and Halloween and maybe some like horror figures, but you never really see one geared towards like actual just like vampires. And that is what this palette's all about. You're gonna have those classic vampire names in here from like, you know, Salvatore, Hello Brother, Michelson, Claudia, you know, Coffin, Lestat, Drain. Like this is all about like vampires and like the Halloween theme. You're gonna have the nice little blood dripping letters in here. It's really, really pretty. Love this palette. I love it. Look like crazy. I feel like it's a vampy-esque look, and it's, I just wanted to rock it today. So I love this. I love the fact that this palette is featuring vampires. You don't see that often. So it's why it's ranked a little bit higher compared to others. So coming in at number 11 and wrapping up the teens, we do have the Bella Beauté Bar Vamped palette. Now to dive into our top 10. So coming at number 10, we do have the Angelica and Odin's Trick or Treat palette. First off, trick or treat, hello, the most classic like Halloween saying ever. Love the outside packaging, very similar to the little ghost palette, but this is more orange featured. And then you look at the colors from the inside. This is more traditional Halloween colors between the oranges, the greens in here, some blacks, maybe some gold. It's kind of more, reminds me more of October. I think it's more of an October feel, but you know, Halloween's in October. I just think it's really beautiful. And all the shade names in here are all geared towards Halloween. Howl, Full Moon, Deadly, Jack-o'-lantern, Witch's Brew, Poison, Cauldron, Cemetery, Vampire, Candy Apple, Goblin, Mummy's Curse. Like all these are definitely geared towards Halloween, towards the Halloween, you know, Halloween season, trick-or-treating. And I just think that this is such a beautiful, beautiful aesthetically pleasing palette. I love this so much. I think she did a good job with this one in particular. Was my absolute favorite. This is going to kick off the top 10s because this really just kind of embodies Halloween with trick-or-treating, the shade names, the color story. Freaking love this. So coming in number 10, we do have the Trick or Treat palette from Angelica and Odin's Eye. Coming in at number 9, this is a palette that does not exist anymore, at least I don't think so, but this is the Witching Hour palette. This was by Alien Cosmetics, which is Unearthly Cosmetics, and I don't think they have this palette anymore. I don't think they made it, but this is definitely a Halloween palette. It's the Witching Hour. And when you open the coaster on the inside, it's Halloween, green, orange, purple, what can you say? And then Halloween colors. Halloween colors right here. And then October colors right here. And then Halloween. October, Halloween. This just really encompasses it all. Plus all the shade names in here are again kind of geared towards Halloween and the witches. And I just think that Alien Cosmetics, oh my god, not Alien. Unearthly Cosmetics did a great job with this. I love this palette and I just wish that they would kind of expand this or kind of do this again because it's so beautiful. And I don't, like I said, I don't think they have this anymore, but I really loved playing with this. I loved it a lot. So coming in at number 9, we do have the Witching Hour palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. Coming in at number 8, we do have one of the ColourPop's best Hocus Pocus palettes. I don't think I had an intro with this. If I did, I'll play it here. I'm not sure if I did. I don't remember. But this is going to be the All Hallows Eve palette. This is their third palette that they did with Hocus Pocus and the Sanderson sisters. First off, the outside packaging, I live for it. I live for this outside packaging. The colors, the background, the back of the story is again really beautiful. But to me, what really sold me on this palette, not necessarily the witches themselves, it's the color story. That is traditional Halloween colors to me. You have the greens, the purples, the blacks, the oranges, maybe some browns, but to me, this is everything that has to do with Halloween. Every single shade name in here reminds me so much of Halloween. It's an All Hallows Eve palette. I just think they did such a great job at capturing the essence of the Sanderson sisters, of Hocus Pocus, and of like a witch's spell, and just Halloween. I really, really love the color story of this. I love the eye look that I did with this, and it's just a fun overall Halloween aesthetic palette. Really enjoyed this, and I think the little clip I showed you of like the swatches and stuff like that, it just reminds me of like how my background used to be to how it is now. Like I love inserting old videos and like old clips because it kind of just shows me how far I've come, and I feel like my background is just a lot better aesthetically pleasing wise. And I actually have some new lights coming in, so hopefully you guys will see a difference in my setup really soon because I added some art. I got some RGB, I got some like colorful changing lights, so hopefully will accentuate the background more. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, coming at number 8, we do have the All Hallows Eve palette from ColourPop. Coming at number 7, y'all, I am so glad I have these palettes because these really do just scream Halloween to me. But the first one is going to be the Droplet of Magic palette from P. Louise. First off, this is supposed to emulate a like Book of Shadows, like a spell book. I love the way they did their outside packaging with like the spiders, the name, just the way that it looks like a book. And then when you open on the inside, y'all have got to see this. They like P. Louise did such a phenomenal job with this. Okay, I did a full review on it. I did 4 looks, by the way, if you guys want to check it out. But they actually made it into an actual book. So you're gonna have the key. All right, so you take this, you take the key to unlock it like you would an actual like book, like a Book of Shadows. You unlock the palette, so you pull the little heart out. Okay, so now you pull the heart out, and then you can actually open the palette. You pull the little binding, and then you open it, and then boom, the Droplet of Magic palette. But not just that, right? When you open it this way, boom. Again, you have 2-sided palettes. So the front side right here, this to me screams graveyard, right? This it screams graveyard. It screams like monsters and ghouls and just really like swampy things. But to me, this just really represents a graveyard. I know this is supposed to be more ghostly feel in here. Like that's kind of the vibe that they're kind of giving is more ghostly, but I see ghostly and I see graveyard. And I think it's a really, really, really beautiful palette. But then on this side, you do have the option of going more traditional with like a vampire and witches. So you have vampire and witches on this side. So you can have like the best of both between the two. So you'll have like the ghost and graveyard, followed by the witches and vampires. I think P. Louise did such a phenomenal job with this palette. I don't know if these are still available. If they are, I'll link them down below. But this was such a fun palette, such a fun video. I loved it. I think I did this on the last day, like Halloween last year, and I loved everything about this. So that is why at number 7, we do have the Droplet of Magic palette from P. Louise. Coming in at number 6, this is a palette that has not been featured on my channel yet because I just got it in the mail. And yes, this palette will be featured in my 4 looks, 4 palettes. But we have the Gourmand Girls Calavera palette right here. Now this is probably the biggest palette they've ever launched, and this is supposed to represent the Day of the Dead. And Christina, who is the owner of Gourmand Girls, actually created this palette in honor of her grandparents and celebrating the Day of the Dead tradition. And when I look at this, I think this is just so beautiful. To me, I love everything that it represents of the Day of the Dead tradition, and I just think she did such a great job with the color story. She's celebrating the life, she's celebrating the tradition when she brings this, she's celebrating the tradition with this. And I just feel like you don't really see that many palettes cater to Day of the Dead, and that is a huge tradition like I talked about earlier. And I just think that Christina did such a great job with this. I love the color story. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a candy bowl, and I just think it's really pretty. And I think this was a perfect vibe for the Halloween season. Now this is currently sold out. I do believe she actually is restocking it. This shade right here, wait till you guys see how beautiful this shade is right here along with this shade. Unbelievably stunning, and along with this shade right here, 3 beautiful shades. I cannot wait to show you guys my look with this, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. So coming in at number 6, we do have the Calavera palette from Gourmand Girls. Coming at number 5, we do have the Bella Beauté bar. This is going to be the Poison Garden palette. First off, we have the Graveyard right here. Love, love, love it. But man, it's the color story on the inside. This color story is just phenomenal. Like, you can do so much with this. This is supposed to be like a poison flower palette. It's a Halloween palette to me. You're going to have those oranges, the greens, the purples, the deep blues and blacks. Like, you can create so much with this. I love the look that I created with this. I feel like I can go like a vampy route with this. I feel like I can go like a witchy route with this. I feel like I can do a traditional Halloween look with this. I feel like I can do like a ghost look with this. Like, I feel like I have so many different options when it comes to this palette. It's why it's ranked so high, because the multi-chromes and duochromes in here are just spectacular and allow you to have so many different looks with this palette. And I just think she did such a beautiful job. And even though it's geared for like poison flowers, it to me just screams Halloween. So that is why at number 5, we do have the Poison Garden palette from Bella Beauté bar. Coming at number 4, we have the Rebel Rouge Labs. This is the Howlin' For You palette. This was a Halloween palette through and through. I told the origins of Halloween in this video right here. I can link it down below. This is the video I told the origins of Halloween in. First off, you're going to have the creepy Dracula castle with the lightning and the moon. And when you open it, you're going to have a wolf with a graveyard. Again, love, love, love the outside aesthetics. And the color story on the inside is just a traditional Halloween color story between the oranges, the greens, and the purples. Everything in here screams Halloween, from Ghosted, Laboratory, Shriek, Menace, Illusion, Abyss, Beast, Zoinks. Like, this is all like Halloween-esque vibes. I told the story of Halloween with this palette. I created a Halloween look with this palette. I love this palette so much. It's always ranked pretty high on my list because this to me just really embodies the essence of Halloween. So it's why it's always really high. I don't know if this palette is still around. I don't even know if the brand is still around, but if they were, this is definitely one to check out. So this is the Rebel Rouge Labs Howlin' For You palette. Now, these last 3 palettes were so hard to rank because they are the perfect Halloween palettes, but I still had to put in order. So coming in at number 3, we have the Batty Bean collaboration with Sprout Cosmetics. This is the Hollow Bean palette. She loves Halloween just as much as I do, and she created this beautiful Halloween palette with Sprout Cosmetics. Now, when you open the color story on the inside, this color story is absolutely gorgeous, but again, we are having some issues. So the shade right here called Black Flame is starting to break apart on the edge. I don't know why. I don't know why this is happening. And this is a palette that, again, I'm just like, no, because the Black Flame candle that she created is so freaking pretty. And I keep having to press it back in, but then every time I open it, it just starts to crack even more. But it is such a beautiful, beautiful like multi-chrome, a beautiful duochrome. And I'm really sad because I love this palette so much. I think Betty Jean did such a beautiful job with this palette. And I believe when I ranked this as like number 2 for like the last 2 years, or like the last year. This ranked in like number 2 because it's just so beautiful. And I think Betty put a lot of work into it. She has her traditional greens, purples, and oranges, and I knew that she knew exactly what she was doing when it came to Halloween. She has all the Halloween names in here, Halloween colors, and just everything about this screams Halloween. I think Betty did the most perfect job, and it's just really sad because I don't think Sprout Cosmetics is a brand anymore, so it's not like I could get a replacement even if I wanted to, but Betty Jean did such a beautiful job that 1000% I'm going to go ahead and put this into a shadow box so I don't lose it anymore or break it anymore, because I love it so much and I'm so proud of my beautiful friend. So coming in at number 2, we have the Halloween X Shroud. We have the Betty Jean X Shroud Halloween palette. Coming number 2, this got bumped. This got bumped from the number 1 place. I believe it's the number 1 place for the last 2 years, and it got bumped. But it is the Gourmand Girls Spooked palette right here. Now, this was such a beautiful palette. This took me by surprise when I played with this, because this I think was like my first Gourmand Girl palette I played with. Y'all, this palette is breathtaking. This is everything I look for in a Halloween palette. You have the blue, you have the purples, the greens, the oranges, the blacks, and you have a red. And you have a red in here. And you can create like a witch vibe with this, a vampire vibe with this, a like mummy vibe with this, a goblin monster vibe with this. Like, you can do so many different looks with this palette. The color story is so beautiful. The names in here are all Halloween names. The outside packaging is all Halloween. Like, this was such a fun palette to play with. This reminds me so much of Halloween. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite Halloween palettes. I think Gourmand Girls did such a great job with this, and I believe this is still available. If it is, you guys can use my code, but it is such a top performer for me when it comes to Halloween. I just feel like it hits every mark I look for. So coming in number 2, 2, we do have the Spook palette from Gourmand Girls. And coming in at number 1, this palette took me by surprise, but I fell so hard in love with it, and there's a reason why it's number 1, but it is the Book of Spells Hocus Pocus Regain Focus palette from P. Louise. First off, I love, love, love the outside packaging. Again, it's a Book of Shadows feel. I think it's so beautiful, but it's going to be the colors from the inside that is just literally everything that I'm looking for. So just like the first one, you're going to have the Book of Shadows right here. You're going to have that key that you have to unlock, which I think is really cool they do this. I love that it just stays attached. I'm just going to unlock my Book of Spells. And when you see it, you guys will realize why this came at number 1. So here we have the Hocus Pocus Regain Focus. On the front side, we're going to have those traditional Halloween purples and greens and blacks. Like this is everything I'm looking for when I want to do like a spider look, a witch look, a ghost look, a monster look, a green swampy thing look. Like this is everything that I look for when I'm looking for a Halloween palette. But then on the back, you have, again, more traditional colors right here between the red and green and the black. Like you have so many different colors you can choose from. This is like the perfect Halloween palette. You're going to kind of have Halloween on the front, October on the back. So you have October, Halloween, October, Halloween. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think P. Louise did the absolute best job with this. This just reminds me so much of Halloween. I can use this for everything I'm looking for. It has every single shade I could possibly want for the month of Halloween. And I just really feel like this captures everything between the greens, the purples, the reds, the oranges, and the blacks. It has everything that I'm looking for between the shade names to the little imprints on the shadows. It is just a thorough, fantastic Halloween palette. I think this has just been like one of my favorites to play with since I got it last year, and I just feel like they really did the best job when curating this palette. So that is why at number 1 we do have the Hocus Pocus Regain Focus palette from P. Louise. Those are all 38 Halloween palettes. Let me know down below what your Halloween palettes are. Maybe I don't have them, and if I don't, I might want to go get them. Or let me know if there's any palettes I mentioned that you guys are like, oh shit, I didn't even think of that for Halloween. Let me know in the comments below. And again, I'm so sorry for not doing Vlog-oween. I will try my best to be here as much as I can, but I am just not committing to it this year because I just have too much going on. That, my most beautiful friends, is it for today's video. If you guys like this video, please make sure you guys give this video a cheeky thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you guys have not already. So I do post 3 to 4 videos every single week. Make sure you guys head over to my other channel. It's R for Life. You guys get to see my cool, wonderful adventures, my amazing husband, Corey. And as always, the biggest thank you goes to these beautiful, wonderful Patreon members you guys see right here. Thank you guys so much for everything. And to my subscribers and viewers, thank you guys so much for being here. Whether you guys like this video, you guys thumbs down this video, you guys subscribed, you guys did not subscribe, either way, thank you guys so much for being here. I love and appreciate each and every single one of you. So with that said, guys, I love you, and I'll see you guys in my next video.